All right, let's get started. It's 7:30, so you guys, thank you for joining us again. Seeing some familiar faces on that list, thank you. Let's see, this is Thursday night's show, and tonight John Conklin is going to show us some scrimmage kick film, walk us through some stuff. Jeff Penny's going to help monitor the chat line. John Juranic was planning on attending with us. And I'm going to plug again. We have a poker game scheduled for next Monday night. If there are any poker players in the audience here, send me an email and I'll forward you the setup. And you guys should join. It's $20 entry, and we have fun. So let me know. I am going to mute myself so you don't get any feedback here. John Conklin, take it away.
All right, thanks, Kirk. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Have lots of film to show. Happy to address issues as they come up on the chat line. My view of video is, some of it is obvious. Some of it is obviously we got it right. Some of it is obviously we got it wrong. Some of it is still inconclusive and room for discussion. But we'll walk through particularly punts because they're one of the most challenging plays we have since the field is stretched so far for us. So I'm going to break it into three phases. Sort of action before the kick, action during the kick, and action after the kick ends. Since the kick is such an important part of punt and defines the punt and is so significant for penalty enforcement. So without further ado, we'll look at some film and talk about it. If you had Broomfield this year, this will look familiar. I'm going to pause it, reset it, and enlarge it so everybody can see, hopefully. All right. So this was Broomfield's punt formation, and it is a legal scrimmage kick formation. There's the ball's here. There is a person or persons more than 10 yards behind the ball who are in position to receive the snap. The obvious unusual thing is there are two of them. So let's talk about formations for a minute. They satisfy the other requirements. They've got 7 on the line, these two are in the backfield. The coach will tell us before the game that who's going to receive the punt and kick the ball is determined immediately before the snap based on the defense's or the receiving team's alignment, ours alignment on the play. So this is particularly challenging for the officials in the backfield, and obviously the white hat is back here, and there's an umpire over here in the backfield. The other thing that makes it challenging is both kickers are rugby-style kickers. So they are inclined to run. And to further complicate it, in this particular play at least, the kicker who appears on the left of the screen, furthest from the referee, is actually a left-footed kicker, and the kicker who is closest to the referee is a right-footed kicker. So it's obviously a very unusual formation, but because they are in a legal scrimmage kick formation, obviously the snapper gets protection. Nobody can be over him. And it otherwise satisfies the requirements. So I'll go ahead and run the play, and you'll see the ball is fielded. He goes to his left, kicks the ball, and it ends up at the end. So out of this play, they actually I'm going to take it slow frame so hopefully everybody can see it. So the second kicker goes out and effectively becomes a blocker that the first kicker goes behind. Obviously, that's legal. And let's go back here and we'll get into this play. Some of you have seen this play before. I'll run it a couple times and then talk about it for a minute. All right. Go forward. So obviously, scrimmage kick formation. We have a kick that is blocked. We have K recovering, and it happens to be the kicker, and he kicks it again. Perfectly legal. The rule book says you can have only one forward pass on a play, but there is no rule that says you can have only one punt on a play. So a lot of kudos to the crew and the white hat for not flagging it, not blowing the play dead, working the entire play. And if you watch at the end, the second kick, which is the legal kick, is partially blocked, but then it's muffed downfield. And so if K had recovered the ball, they would have had the ball at that position, and if it was enough for a first down, they would have had the ball. They would have had the ball either way, 1st and 10 at that location.
Hey, John, let's talk about mechanics, the line judge mechanic on this play when you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just noticed, and this crew, I agree, this is a play that is one in a million times to see. So the line judge heads back, and I can totally understand why. I mean, we've got a goal line and a pylon, who knows. But I always like to talk about the money line. If he were to turn and run or kick it again, really our line judge is to be downfield and might actually be closer to this rugby mess that happens at the end of the play. I don't know. This is a pylon concern right there, so it's probably better he was there. I don't know.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think I'll go back and start it again. The ball's being snapped at the 22-yard line. The referee is back at about the 4-yard line. Obviously, he's opposite side of the field. And now in this play, it was back in the day when the umpire was still in the receiving team's backfield. Today, that ball would have been heading basically straight for the umpire. So I'm not sure we'd want the line judge to go back today if the umpire is back there already, because we'd have that goal line covered and the pylon covered as well. The line judge can help with the sideline from further downfield. So given the crew mechanics at this time, that was probably okay for the line judge to do to help out the referee. But I think today we would not want the line judge to do that if the line of scrimmage was that far upfield. And then you're right, because at the end of the play, in that scramble, a lot of things could happen. You could have fouls, and the back judge, actually that's the umpire, is left to come into that.
It seems like 9 times out of 10, the punter would probably maybe try to throw it and not kick it again. I don't think I've ever seen a second kick, but that downfield pass coverage, I think, is critical. The head linesman stayed on the line of scrimmage.
Hey, John, so there's a question on the chat that asks about, can you get a roughing the kicker on the second kick then?
Great question. I think the short answer to the question is yes, because he's still going to be a kicker. However, it is certainly, let me go back to it, it is certainly not assured that a punt is going to be made. So because he's running and scrambling and off to the side, he'd have to do something pretty egregious to call it roughing the kicker. He'd have to, hit him in the head or let him take 2 steps and so forth. I think the fact the first kick was touched doesn't give them license to just do whatever they want. But when he's running like that, I can't envision what the defense could do that would result in a roughing the kicker call other than targeting or some kind of face mask or something, one of those types of fouls rather than roughing the kicker.
Another good question that came up was from Joe Martin. He just, hey, after the touch downfield, do they need the yards to gain the first down? And I know the answer to that one, but I mean, it's something that got thrown out there. I mean, when you have a touch right there and now a scramble for the ball, once the receiving team has touched it or muffed, they don't have to have the line to gain. If the ball is crossed the line.
So we had a legal kick that crossed the line of scrimmage, touched by R, and so that is a free ball. It's still a kick, so if a K player recovers it, they can't advance. They would be dead right there and would want to kill that play to stop anything bad from happening afterwards. But in terms of awarding a first down, we would go ahead and give them a first down. Now, here's the money question. Does the clock start on the snap or on the ready?
I'll wait to hear some of the chat answers.
Can we survey that?
Maybe a poll.
Can we pull that, Kirk?
There you go.
So let's do yes if it starts on the ready, no if it starts on the snap. I'll let the play run while they're. So it looks like 74% say snap, 25% say on the ready. It is on the snap because we had a legal kick during the play. Either team being awarded first down following a legal kick, the clock is going to start on the snap. All right. And I have no doubt if I'm wrong about anything I say during this presentation that Ken Beltran will correct me and make sure everybody knows the right answer. So on this play, I'll run it through a couple times. Obviously, the red arrow is on number 25, blocker on K and the left wing back. They are in a scrimmage kick formation. Nobody's over the snapper. And let's watch and see what he's going to do. Okay. So that is an illegal block below the waist on the kicking team. I'm going to back it up to the point where he does that. You know, in our mechanics, we'd have the referee over on the right side off screen for the right-footed kicker's leg. The umpire would be over on the left side. So one of the issues that comes up here is, you know, who's got that? Whose coverage is that? And I think it's the referees. I think the white hat is looking across. At the time that block happens, the punter is not threatened. Nobody's gotten close enough, I think, to draw the referee's attention. And it's a good example of a play where, as the white hat, we have to be careful not to just watch the ball go to the punter drop the ball, and the punter kick the ball. But be aware that we still have opposite side responsibility. Now, could the umpire see that? He could, but the umpire obviously is responsible for the inside guys. So he may or may not. Enforcement of that penalty before the kick. So under the new rule that began last year, R does have the option to take the 15-yard penalty for an illegal block below the waist at the end spot of the play. If there's a fair catch, they can take it from that spot. If there's a run back, they can take it on top of that. Or they could move K back and have them re-kick. Would be their two options for a penalty that occurs by the kicking team during the play before the ball is caught by the receivers. All right, this play is a fake punt, which is something else we have to be aware of. I'll let it run a couple times. He's real close to the line to gain. The head linesman, of course, is staying home. He trails the runner, which I think is appropriate. That's a tough call. I think you got to do the best you can on that. That kid reaches the ball out and is really close, and then if you watch carefully, the ball comes loose after it goes across the plane of the sideline. I'll advance it to the end zone view. And what this is showing with the dark line is obviously the referee's view of the play from the bottom right. And again, we'd have the umpire on the lower left looking in as well. And from the referee's view, all right, let it run again and watch. All right, watch this block right here on the left end to spring the runner. He's going to just hold and pull the guy backwards so that the runner can get out there. And as it turned out on this play, The runner did not make the line to gain on 4th down, so took the ball, declined the penalty, and took the ball at the where the run ended. If they had accepted the penalty, if he had made the line to gain, their only option would have been to enforce the penalty from the previous spot. And a hold enforced from there would have been 10 yards back. It was right about the 20-yard line where they snapped the ball, 21-yard line, I think. Again, we have to be sensitive to who has this call. I think that's one probably for sure the umpire would see, and the referee should have it as well. The rest of the line action is pretty benign. Nobody's threatening the punter. The referee should not be looking back. Once the punter takes off, the referee's got to go with him. But we should definitely have a flag on that play. All right, now we get into the roughing versus running into stuff. Punter here is going to get annihilated right as he kicks the ball, no block. And I'll advance it to the end zone view of this play. Or I'm sorry, the close-up view of this play, and you'll see so clearly roughing, he runs into him. One question on this play is whether we might have a targeting foul. The big kid coming in does lean his head in, kind of lead with his head. And the question is that contact? Is that helmet-to-helmet contact? It's very, very close. And I would say this film would support that call if you made it. It certainly supports roughing the kicker. If you watch carefully, the rusher tries to turn his head away at the last second and kind of hit more with his chest and shoulder. But it does look like their face masks come together. And I think, it's a 15-yard penalty either way. Is it flagrant where you eject the kid from the game? I don't think so. We don't see the elements of intent. He does launch, but he's launching to try to block the ball, and he gets back to his feet right about the time that he collides with him. So he didn't launch into the player. I think his head is extended because he's reaching out, again, as opposed to extending his head to lead with his helmet.
John, I kind of see that as like he's defenseless. He's just not necessarily.
Hunter is defenseless. There's no doubt about
it. In there, but
I think you probably have to call one or the other. I don't think you're going to call both. And under the rule book, even if you called both, they'd only get to choose one. It's not an add-on foul. So I think this was called as roughing the punter and enforced as roughing the punter.
Yeah.
And be aware that unlike action on the quarterback, we now have the rule that any action on the quarterback that is a 15-yard penalty falls under the rubric of roughing the passer. Even if it's a face mask or helmet to helmet or something like that. We don't have the same rule with punters, kickers. So you could call this targeting instead of roughing the kicker. But since they're both the same penalty, I don't think it would make a difference.
Hey, John, I've got a question for wannabe referees. What are you focusing on to know if this ball was touched or not? I know you've got the sound potential. That isn't always enough. Like right when, because I'm sure this head coach of the defense, the receiving team, is going to yell, or somebody's going to yell, he tipped it. What are you doing as a white hat? Where are you watching to try to have that type of information?
So that white hat in this video is a little deeper than I prefer to be behind the kicker. Now he's back. I think he's close to the goal line. The pylon's right there. So I can understand being a step or two further back, but I'd probably be closer, like the probably the 4-yard line, so that I have a little better angle on that exact issue. Otherwise, it's if the ball gets redirected, a lot of times you can tell by the reaction of the players. The kid who touches the ball and even the kicker will react differently if the ball's touched. Everybody will look to see where it goes. But I try to get an angle where I can see the kid coming in. And sometimes that's going to depend on the angle he's coming from. This angle from the short side of the field is actually one of the tougher ones. It's a little bit easier if the rusher is coming across from the other direction, because you can see his movement across and his hands outstretched and so forth. So here it's a little tougher. You know, if he came up to me afterwards and said, you know, I touched the ball or the ball touched me, I'd have to, with that hard of a hit, I'd have to see in my mind visual evidence to confirm that. If it's, you know, it brushed by my fingernail, I felt it or something like that, that's not enough to call me off of the play. I'm going to have to see visual evidence that the ball was touched, you know, that it was blocked to some degree, if I'm not going to throw a flag on this play. Here's another one, and I'll let it play a couple times. So this brings up the running into the kicker versus roughing the kicker. I'll slow it down this time and play it through. So no touching of the ball, all kicking leg, pretty hard. So the philosophy we follow as white hats is if they hit the plant leg, that's more dangerous to the kicker. And so if they hit the leg that's on the ground, the plant leg, we have roughing. If they hit the kicking leg, we generally have running into the kicker. Could somebody run into the kicking leg as it's extended hard enough that, you know, you'd call it roughing instead of running into the kicker? Potentially. I guess let's survey on this, Kirk. Who would call that running into the kicker for yes, and who would call it roughing the kicker for no? So the question could be phrased as, is this running into the kicker? 5-yard penalty, or is this roughing the kicker, 15-yard penalty?
So the question is it roughing? I'm sorry, is it running into was your question? Yes or no? Is it
yes,
running
it's
into?
Running into kicker. Yes, it's running into the kicker, or no, it's roughing the kicker.
All right, I'll stop it in 3, 2, 1. Looks like they like running into.
Running into, yeah, about 2/3 to 1/3. It looks bad because the kid spins around and ends up on the ground and all that. But in general, I think I don't think I'd be critical of a white hat who called this roughing, but I'd probably favor running into the kicker. Just consistent with the philosophy that it was all kicking leg. All right. This is an interesting play. This is drawing your attention to the kid, number 15 on the right side of the screen, who's going to go low and chop the player. But there's more. If you watch at the end, watch the official is going to throw a flag. I'll play it again. All right. And then we'll look at the end zone view because it's helpful. So this is right before the block is happening there at the bottom of the screen. I'll back that up. Clearly, number 15 goes low, and it's an illegal block below the waist. And then the runner goes on, and this will be a slow-mo view. So if you see the red line, that's the edge of the coach's box. And of course, this coach is standing maybe half a yard into the coach's box. There's another coach behind the official who's probably over the line as well. And if you watch the official, he doesn't like that coach being there. So he's going to reach out and shove him out of the way, and completely turn his back on the play, and then go on. So the block below the waist call is a good call, and I think probably the wing official has to have that call. Perhaps the umpire, if he's on that side coming upfield, might see it through players, but he'd have to have a pretty clean look at it. Back judge might see it as he's cleaning up behind, but I think it's probably the wing official who's the primary on that. And then, of course, we don't want to be shoving coaches out of the way. And they did call a sideline interference on the coach. So, obviously the official knew he was there. He could have gone around him and then just thrown a flag for sideline warning and, reinforced to the coach to stay back. We don't ever want to be pushing coaches out of the way physically. If the coach trips over the yard marker and lands on his head and gets hurt, we're in trouble for that. If he trips over somebody else's foot, etc. So we really don't want to physically move people. If you don't know he's there, that official doesn't know he's there and turns to go upfield and runs into him shoulder to shoulder or hits him, we got to have a sideline interference on that. But in this case, he knows he's there. He's already reaching his arm out, so he's just shoving him out of the way. We really don't want that. All right, this play illustrates something before we get into the after the kicks over type plays a lot. So this punt is partially blocked, and then it bounces back. And at the end of the play, if you look across at the marker, it's going to end up being about a half-yard punt. This is why we have the head linesman stay on the line of scrimmage. So there's where the kick, the line of scrimmage was. There's where it's recovered. It's about a yard. So the head linesman stays home so that we know if the ball crosses the line of scrimmage. But then, frankly, we've got to know if it hits the ground and bounces back, we've got to know where it's recovered. This is a K player in white. If he recovers the ball just a little bit back over here, he can advance that ball. And we've got to let that play go. Here, it's a whistle. K's recovered. It's going to be our ball, first down here. But I think sometimes it's easy as a head linesman to get in the habit of, seeing the ball cross the line of scrimmage and go downfield as fast as we can, which is fine if we know it's a good deep kick. But if we want to, at least be aware that if it's short or there's a lot of wind or bad weather or the kick, especially if it's partially blocked, we probably need to stay home because that line of scrimmage becomes our money line for that type of play in terms of the action that could happen. Let's go. All right. So I'll let this run a couple of times. We have the ball that was kicked, punt, muffed by the receivers or touched by the receivers, and K recovers and starts running, and about 15 yards downfield, he's tackled. There's a lot of things wrong with what I just described. The kick had not ended until the K player recovered it. Since he was the first to recover the ball, it is dead right there. So as soon as K recovers it, we should have whistles, killing the clock, and people stopping late action from happening. And that is it's so counterintuitive. It's so, we're trained that that when there's action going on like that, we've got an upright player who's on his feet who gets the ball. We're not used to blowing that dead. That's one of very few situations where we're going to do that. But it's an important one because we've got players going all different directions and a lot can happen. That's not going to be pretty. So, the last thing you want is to have this go to the end zone and run down and signal a touchdown. And then somebody else on the crew comes up and says, wait a minute, wasn't that recovered by the kickers? And oh yeah, that's not a touchdown. And then the question becomes, well, where did he recover the ball? So, the official on the lineup at the top stops running to the spot, and officiates the rest of the play. I don't know where the back judge is while all this is going on, assuming he's out of the frame to the left. The other problem with this, when I go to this is, man, the receiver gets clocked before the ball gets there.
And that's definitely KCI.
So we've got KCI. So we should have a flag at that spot, and we should have a whistle when the ball is recovered. The hit on the receiver is pretty hard, but it seems shoulder to shoulder. I mean, he's a defenseless player. It doesn't look to me like he's hit in the head. He's not hit with the helmet. We don't see the indicia of a flagrant foul. He didn't launch. He takes his head to the side, but he does blow him up. I don't know what the kid was thinking. Who knows? They're not.
You know, John, there's a couple of comments on here, and I would tell you, I so agree, because that first clip, it looked like it was so far away from the ball that it was possibly muffed that even before the hit was made. I mean, how angles can make such a difference as to where you are on the field. Because in this clip here, I mean, it's just like the ball is right next to him. He clearly gets clocked, and then the ball comes right next to him. So angles are always, that's so important to be in the right position, because it can distort the way that you would see the outcome of the play.
Exactly. And again, I'm not sure where the back judge is. I guess he's got to be below screen somewhere.
If you had two players back, he's well, I don't know if they're running is it a 5 or 7-man career, but on a 5-man, then we're going to be behind those two receivers in the back. We're not going to be to the side. I mean, it's key with that angle to be able to watch and try to get in front of and watch the receiver's hands. That's the key here when you're a back judge. So you've got to get in the right position there. Now, I guess the other question is, where is that KCI going to be enforced from?
Yeah, so R has 3 options. They can always take the result of the play, which obviously they're not going to want to here. Although interestingly, I'm not sure, you can't tell on this view where or if it ever touches R, or if the K player, just because of the way it bounced, or thought it did and just grabbed the ball and went with it. But so they can always take the result of the play, obviously. The 15-yard KCI penalty can either be enforced from the previous spot and replay the down, or they can take an awarded fair catch at the spot of the foul and have the 15 yards added on. Awarded fair catches, we might as well talk about those for a minute, are rare but significant because it allows the team to do some things afterwards. They can determine where on the field, where in between the hash marks they want the ball spotted from. They can line up for a free kick and attempt a field goal after an awarded fair catch. I've only had it in one game, but they can do that. If they do that, you kind of have to almost take an official's timeout and explain to everybody what they're supposed to do, because the teams will not know. You got to tell them, the kicker has to use a tee like he would for a kickoff, or have somebody hold the ball. There's two free kick lines that are 10 yards apart, so the receiving team cannot be closer than 10 yards. All the rules that apply to free kicks apply to that kick as well. The mechanics on it are very unusual. The referee and the umpire actually go underneath the uprights. The back judge has the kicker's line, the line judge has the receiver's line, and the head linesman takes a spot, depending on how far the kick is, somewhere between the goal line and the kick line, but close enough basically to the goal line to be able to cover it if it threatens the goal line.
So, John, I have a question. So that ball bounces back toward the line of scrimmage, another, let's say, 5 yards, and then it is caught by the kicking team, and which is blown dead because they can't advance at that point. So we're going to go back to the spot of the foul and then mark off for the KCI, or from the spot in which the ball was recovered by the kicking team?
From the spot of the foul, because you're giving them an awarded fair catch on the foul. So yeah, and the fact the ball bounced the other way and ended up the dead ball spot technically is ahead of that. I guess, if the ball really bounced back towards the line of scrimmage and rolled, 20 yards, or there was a scramble for it, and, it was recovered farther ahead than more than 15 yards ahead of where an awarded fair catch would go from, they could take the ball at that spot. They'd be declining the penalty, basically. But yeah, on kick plays, the key is, where did the kick end? Where does the kick end? And then where does the play end? And almost unlike any other play, sometimes the play ends inbounds with a player upright with the ball. Sometimes the kick ends because it goes across the goal line. These are the things that the officials, as officials, we have to have clear in our mind, and should be thinking about pre-play on every punt. We know what some of the fouls that we typically see on a punt. We'll get to some of the blocks in the back and stuff, and the referee is aware of that. We could have roughing or running into, that kind of thing, and we're all always watching for holding and blocks in the back and so forth. But we should process, as part of the pre-snap routine on any punt, that where's the end of the kick, where's the end of the play. And obviously most of the time it's going to be the back judge who determines the end of the kick. But if it's blocked or a very short kick, 10 yards downfield, and K recovers it and starts to run, it's probably going to be the line judge or the head linesman who's blowing that dead and signaling the spot where we have it. So I think it's important for all the officials to have those things in mind before the play starts.
One of the things coming up in chat is just the question about that hit there on the punter. I don't see targeting. But then again, when you get to a different angle, things look a little differently. So, but from this view, from what we're seeing on this play here, I just don't. I see him giving him a pretty solid shoulder.
Yeah, it's kind of like the roughing the kicker we saw. If you called this targeting, you're almost hurting the receivers because their options are fewer, frankly, than if you call it kick catching interference, given the options that come with that penalty. But yeah, I don't see the
good point.
Leading with the head. I don't see the launching. Clearly it's a hard hit. And again, I don't know what the kid was thinking, but I think it's just kick catching interference. All right, let's go to the next play.
A lot of good comments on the chat box. It's just, and they're answering. I'm getting a lot of help with answers to some of the questions, so I appreciate that, guys.
Okay. Let's see here. All right, let's take a look at blocks in the back and other illegal blocks. Obviously, the things that make kick plays dangerous and unusual at all levels of sports all levels of football rather, are people running as fast as they can in opposite directions. And when we look at this point, what stands out to me, and hopefully would stand out to the officials, the wing officials, as they're coming downfield, in particular the line judge and the back judge here, is there's a lot of black that's closing in on the receiver. So we have quite a few red shirts trailing black shirts, which is the recipe we're looking for illegal blocks in the back, or even blindside blocks. So I'll go forward on this, and we are going to get a block in the back call right there, which from this angle I think is supported. But then watch this block. That receiver anticipates that this kid is going to turn and lights him up. Now I'm going to go, sorry about that. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay. So punt fielded cleanly by R. There was the block in the back called. Kirk, I want to survey on the second block, whether it's a blindside block or not. And I'll let this play so that everybody can see it again. There's the block in the back. I think we'd all agree it's there. Then this kid is turning. And the question is.
So ask it as a yes/no question.
Yeah. So the question, yes or no, is this a blindside block by the receiver highlighted with the red arrow? And I'll just go back to that.
All right, I'll go 3, 2, 1.
And this was a 60-yard return. We have overwhelming yes, 87% yes. I think. What's that?
I'm with him on that.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it's right in here in real speed. I can slow it down a little bit. He turned, but does he have a chance to protect himself? Is the question there, and he kind of gets blown up. So I think the film would support that call. I don't think that would be a problem. So if we have 2 flags on that, obviously the block in the back is a 10-yard penalty from the end of the kick where back judge has placed his beanbag, and the blindside block would be a 15-yard penalty, so they'd want to go with the blindside block to get the additional yardage the kicking team would to get them backed up the additional 5 yards. So instead of having the ball at the 8-yard line, they're basically going to have the ball back at their own 30 instead of the K-8-yard line. So that's big penalty. All right, let's see here. Oh, this is just a different angle on the same thing. All right. Punt. All on the ground for a second, and then another long return. I'm going to play it one more time at this speed. And then here's a slower version of the block at the time the receiver muffs the ball and then picks it up. And this is an earlier view as he's coming down, and it illustrates the importance of watching all of the action. Because right there is when the receiver, the defender, or blocker rather, engages that player, and then that is a continuation of the same block. Remember, if a block starts in the front or side, it can continue into the back. And, we could nitpick that he grabbed a little jersey at the very end, but it clearly didn't restrict the player in any way. So I think this is a legal block. And it'd be easy for somebody looking at something else to look at the end of this and think that we've got a block in the back. But, that's where we've got to slow down and make sure we've seen the whole thing. But number 5 really never has his hands off of him from the time that he starts contacting him until he finishes that block. So I'm happy for anybody who disagrees to light up the chat line and we can talk about it further, share their comments.
John, I think the chat line is in total agreement with what you're saying there. And seeing it all this displays exactly why it's important to be able to see the whole thing, because if you just catch part of that, you very well could find yourself throwing a flag, and that wouldn't necessarily be warranted on that particular situation. So I think most are all saying, hey, that's a great observation, and they got nothing on this one.
Okay. And the other thing to talk about on this one a little bit is the, who's got that? This is the gunner on the head linesman's side coming down, but then he really is kind of picked up by other players as he gets closer to the receiver. And with the ball muffed, that's obviously going to draw the back judge's attention. I think they did have a flag on this play actually for a block in the back, and it was not a good flag. But the back judge has to be sensitive to the ball being muffed and it being on the ground. For our mechanics, I would hope the line judge, may pick that up because there really isn't anyone else threatening that deep. The gunner on his side is pretty clear, running pretty clear at that point. And of course, he then looks like he almost gets dragged down. But I think it probably, my understanding of the wing mechanics, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, is basically the wings are watching their respective gunners go down as much as they can, especially if there's close, tight contact, or if there's, been past problems earlier in the game. But so I would think that would have to be the line judge who would be watching that block and would know that that was not a foul. All right, next clip. Another close one. I'll let it play a couple times. This is going to be from the slow motion. Right there, 45, blocking the back to spring him.
Oh, come on, man. Yeah, well, in the open field.
Yeah, now is this a blindside block?
My screen went still.
It's coming.
There we
Yeah.
go.
So I'll replay this one.
Yeah.
So there's the block in the back. Then as we get down here, obviously this guy's, the guy in yellow, his focus is on tackling the runner that he's almost still. And here's two guys coming upstream, another red flag for us. When we see people moving opposite directions like that, I think the wing official is in good position here, and man, he just clocks him. So that would be a blindside block. Same deal as last time in terms of enforcement. We can they can take the 10-yard penalty from the end of the kick where the back judge threw his beanbag, but they're probably going to take the 15-yarder on the return. So, all right, let's move ahead. I think we've got one more block in the back here. I don't know about this one. I wanted to survey this one. I'll let this run a couple times, and then I'll show you the end zone view, slow motion, and you can decide. Again, another long return. In fact, this one's a touchdown. It's going to be right as he catches the ball. And again, we have the defender beat by about 5 yards chasing. And as they say, when they're beat, they cheat. That chase position is not advantageous for the defender, or the receiver rather, sorry. So he's going to try to do something to make it up. And so now I'll go to the slow motion view. And there's a couple things on this.
We might want to define the area of what is termed the back part of the player.
I really think from this angle, well, let's survey it first, Kirk. Is that a block in the back or not? Yes or no? Block in the back, yes or no?
Ooh, get your vote in. It's tight. I'll close it in 3.
Oh, this will be interesting.
2, 1. Yowza.
Man, I'm struggling with that one.
Very interesting. Okay. Well, so our philosophy on block in the back is, it's the numbers. It's between the shoulder blades, basically. And so the question becomes, does the blocker here have one hand on the shoulder? It looks like the left hand is on the shoulder. I'll stop it next time through. Getting close. So right there, this hand is touching the kicker's left shoulder. And now he probably has one hand on the back, we would assume. But what's interesting to me is you're going to see the runner is in the process of setting his right foot to start trying to go the other direction and shake the tackle. And so the kicker actually starts leaning that direction too to make that adjustment when he gets pushed. And I'll take it forward. There you can see the runner setting his foot. And the kicker's pushed. I have no doubt about that. but his shoulder twists back too. And to me, that says that he was pushed on the shoulder, on the arm, rather than in the back. When his shoulder twists up like that and back, is there some force from behind? Yeah, but it's really close. I'm not surprised it's 50-50. Would I say throwing a flag on that is dead wrong? No, I think the film is 50-50, and it would very much depend on the angle that you saw this from. Now, here is the line judge on the play coming up field. His position isn't terrible. He's not moving very fast, but line judges usually don't. I'm kidding. He's running. He's good. And, obviously he should have eyes on this because he sees that the receiving team player is in a chase position. I would hope the back judge on the inside, sees the ball recovered and has his eyes on the same thing. This probably should be one where, best case scenario, once they see the play, if one or both of them throw the flag, they come in and talk about it. I think the back judge, if he's in good position, probably has a little better angle to see in between the players and have information. I don't think the line judge throws on this. Yeah, the line judge did not. I think the back judge threw on this because they did have a penalty on this for blocking the back. It's really close. I wouldn't fault it either way. If anybody has a different opinion or a particular reason they think it is a block in the back, I've said why I don't think it is technically. If anybody thinks it really is, I'm welcome for them to share it.
I'm with you on that one. I mean, there's a couple comments. It's going both ways, but I would say the thing about that is when you get into position, try to get stationary. Just you see it coming. I mean, you got an awareness that there's going to be action that's going to take place. That's when you got to get stationary and watch it unfold. And those things that you're talking about that are very specific to how the body is turning and how the player has positioned himself when he comes in toward the runner and avoids contact. Those are all very, important indicators to look for. It's tough. But that's when the game starts to move a little slower for you, when you're way ahead of it. If you're not, looking at that action and not getting caught up with the ball at that point, then you'll see a lot of what's happening as it develops. But just get stationary and let it unfold. And of course, on video, it's a lot easier to see it than it is, live out there on the field. But that's a tough call. I mean, I can see why it went, as close as it did. For me, I think, hey, I'm going to let that one ride myself. I'm not going to get caught up in there was contact. Yes. There was also an opportunity, slowed that runner down, probably could have even made the tackle still. But, if somebody said they had a foul, I wouldn't dispute it either way. Tough one.
John, I've got 8:30 on the clock.
Oh, okay. Well, let's wrap up here. I'll go through this one real quick. This one. I'll run it one more time at full speed, and then we'll go to the slow-mo, and you can see the penalty. Those long run backs, this is why it's important to get back downfield. Coming up here is right here is coming up on the bottom of the screen. Let me jump ahead now. Pretty clear, takes him out of the play, springs him. That's why as the wing official, as you're going downfield on a punt like that, if you see, particularly if you see the runner break free, you got to be prepared for that and get back because those same types of blocks in the back, blindside blocks, don't just happen where the receiver catches the ball on punts. And that's one of the things that makes them challenging for us is we're spread out as much as we are on any play. And that type of action can occur pretty much anywhere on the field during the play. All right, I will wrap up. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate your patience and participation.
John, that was outstanding. Great job. I know just looking at the chat, this is a great set of film. Thank you for breaking that stuff down. Loved all the comments, vocal and on the chat. So, all right, guys, good night. Again, if we got any poker players, send me an email. I'll get you an invite for the Monday night poker tournament if you want to play. Thanks, Jeff Penny. Great job for stepping in there. Have a good night, all.
Yes, sir. Good job, chat crew. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jeff.